In this tutorial we illustrate basic features of Kwatee Agile deployment. We'll configure a simple greeting TCP service and then deploy it. We start by creating the generic package that represents our application and give it a short description. In that package we configure a version which corresponds to a specific instance of the service implementation. We upload the actual binaries, which by the way can be found in the examples directory of the distribution. These are all the platforms that this version could be deployed on. To make our service controllable, we configure an executable. With the executable actions we specify the shell commands to start the process as well as the one that will stop it. The second step is to configure the server on which we will deploy our service. We'll configure a Linux server. To avoid being prompted for credentials each time an underlying SSH connection is established, we can save a user and password. Keep in mind that this user must have read and write privileges to the required deployment directories on the server. Now we put it all together in the context of an environment. To begin with, we must specify which packages will be used in this environment. And also the available target servers. We provide a brief description and move on to configure the default sketch deployment. Deployments are used to specify which packages must be installed on which servers, and also the actual versions to be deployed even though there's only one at this point. We can now test our configuration, starting with the deployment of the environment. Everything went well, and looking at the detailed status, we can see all the files that were installed. Now start my service. The status shows no errors but is undetermined because my service doesn't yet return something that Kwatee can interpret. We open a new browser window and navigate to the service's address and port to verify that it responds as expected. Back to the deployment configuration. We freeze a clone of Sketch to make it ready for production and to guarantee that no further changes can be applied to it or its underlying packages during the lifecycle of the environment. Now we will improve the service behavior without altering the standard archive. Note that version 1.0 is no longer editable since it is used by the deployment we just froze. Since we need to do some changes, let's duplicate this version. We will make the service Kwatee friendly by overlaying a utility shell script. The new script can start, stop, query the status of the service and generate result codes that are unambiguously understood by Kwatee. Note also that the start script refers to a Kwatee variable instead of specifying an explicit port. In effect, the service is now templatized. We return to the environment and configure the sketch deployment to use the newly defined version. As you can see, we must provide a value for the myService port variable which we've just introduced. This is done in the variables configuration panel. Since we're pretty confident that it will work, we immediately freeze the new deployment. And now we go to the management panel to deploy the updated service. Launch the service, and this time we notice that Kwatee is confident that the service was properly started. Finally, we verify that the service is active at the newly configured address. This concludes our introductory Kwatee tutorial.